This video is about exercise-induced inflammation and how it builds muscle mass. So I did a Google search just to show you how kind of easy this is. You can see that right here, exercise. IL6 is a pro-inflammatory cytokine, and satellite cells, this is the name of the stem cells that are found in skeletal muscle. So we need IL6 to build muscle, but if you have too much IL6 along with IL1 and TNF and IL-17, it's the IL6 when produced in excess without control that leads to the cytokine storm that is a big killer for people with COVID. So we want to have properly regulated interleukin-6 production. And multiple papers have talked about exercise interleukin-6. Now you can see, look at this. IL-6 increases 100-fold, or as much as 100 times after a marathon race. Not enough to cause the cytokine storm, obviously, because otherwise, you have all these marathoners dying. The point, though, is that this goes up massively. And after you have massive increase in IL-6 after heavy exercise, the last thing you want to do after running a marathon is to go out and run another one. That'll just make the situation worse, and that will make you sick and end up with the overtraining syndrome, and perhaps even be potentially lethal for some people if they exercise too much. So interleukin-6 in skeletal muscle, a double-edged sword is the question. Well, what does that mean? Well, enough IL-6 builds muscle. Too much IL-6 in an uncontrolled pro-inflammatory state like in obesity and diabetes, that will damage muscles. This study looked at the increase in interleukin-6, which is the biggie. Interleukin-6 is the key pro-inflammatory cytokine that regulates skeletal muscle regeneration. You can see what happens at baseline. This is time in minutes. So this is obviously, you divide 60 into 300, you got 5 hours here. So after 5 hours of intense, heavy exercise, it still isn't back to normal. That's why you got to rest after exercise. So it goes up, and then it drops back down. Okay, so that's just normal. That's how it works. So this article, I'm going to show you it'll be a semi-complicated picture, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to understand it. So this is where it came from. So here we have hypertrophy. This means muscle building due to IL-6 release after exercise. Love it. Perfect. That's what we need. So after you exercise, IL-6 goes up, and you get muscle cell hypertrophy or increase in size, which is what we want from exercise. Look at this one, the second one. This is injury. So you have injured muscle. Well, IL-6 will be released again. And injured muscle, the IL-6 will help injured muscles to regenerate and repair. Very different scenario. So let's just take obesity, because this is the biggest issue that people have when it comes to skeletal muscle health. And I'll show you pictures in a couple seconds. So here you have an obese person. And obese body chemistry produces an excess amount of interleukin-6, and chronically, it doesn't go up and down, it stays elevated. So after injury, if you're not pro-inflammatory, if you're not obese and unhealthy, after injury, IL-6 goes up, it goes down, and you get regeneration. Same thing for exercise. If you're not obese and diabetic and pro-inflammatory, acute exercise, IL-6 goes up, and after exercise, and then it goes back down to normal, and you get hypertrophy. Over here, in obesity, you live in a chronic IL-6 overproduction state. And so this trashes multiple tissues, including skeletal muscle. So in this case, the hypertrophy scenario does not work quite so well. Same thing for diabetics. You want to normalize body chemistry. I'm going to show you what it looks like in actual skeletal muscle. So these are images that I created and put in this book that came out at the beginning of 2020, about a year ago. I can't believe how fast this COVID year has gone by. So I mentioned before, satellite cells. These are your muscle stem cells. Everyone's heard about stem cells. You get an injection and the tissue gets better, regenerates. Well, stem cells are very important for that. Mitochondria are the organelle inside cells that create energy. So in a healthy, deflamed muscle, look at the nice muscle fiber size, lots of mitochondria, MT, and then lots of satellite cells. Compare this to an inflamed person where you have muscle cell atrophy, so they're smaller. You've got way less mitochondria and less satellite cells, and the pro-inflammatory obese body is burdened by an excess of gut-derived and mouth-derived endotoxin that damages all tissues, or at least most tissues that have been studied, including skeletal muscle. So this person, they exercise, they get injured, the satellite cells kick in, and they get regeneration. This person, you can see, it would not work. So what else do we know about what happens with normal deflamed skeletal muscle compared to pro-inflammatory muscle? Okay, well, you can see right here, same picture. All I did was add on the deflame side triglycerides. Healthy muscles store triglyceride for use during exercise. Now, it's supposed to be stored at a proper amount, as needed. Muscle is not supposed to be a storage depot for extra calories from overeating sugar, flour, and refined oils, and you just load up on. Well, let me show you the difference between a normal deflame muscle, and this is a pro-inflammatory muscle right here. You can see, same as I showed in the previous image. Look what happened over here. We still have the small skeletal muscle, lack of satellite cells, lack of mitochondria, and you can see triglycerides. What's that guy called? That is, I can't believe it. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. I'll get to it. This is a diglyceride. CE is called ceramide. PA is palmitic acid. Palmitic acid is a saturated fatty acid that is created in excess if you overeat sugar and flour. And that's what trashes skeletal muscles. You also have infiltration of skeletal muscle with all these immune cells. These M1, they're called M1 macrophages. They're pro-inflammatory immune cells. So look at how burdened the inflamed muscle is compared to the deflamed muscle. This muscle will hypertrophy. It will increase in size with exercise. This one over here, well, you have to get rid of the excess calories, and you can restore this inflamed muscle back to this healthy deflamed muscle. But this is the difference. This muscle here is being compromised by the excess IL6 that stays elevated. So this would be elevation, and it lives there. This would be the normal range that you would have right here. This is elevation chronically. For exercise, so these people, their IL6 is here, normal range. It goes up with exercise, but then comes back down. That is a healthy deflamed muscle versus a chronically inflamed muscle. So there's this healthy deflame muscle where you exercise, IL6 goes up, activates satellite cells, and they help to, well, these are muscle stem cells, so they regenerate skeletal muscle fibers to increase muscle size and strength. So it's very important to deflame your body so you have muscles that are capable of going through the hypertrophy pattern versus the atrophy scenario. Anybody aging is at risk for being over here if you overeat and stay inactive. So you must get your biochemical markers back to normal, all the markers I've talked about in previous videos and discussed in all the books. So if you like this video, what I just described is found in this book. So this book explains what happens to joints, muscles, bones, tendons, the even autoimmune disease, blood vessels, when we overeat sugar, flour, calories. Lots of pictures in that book. This book explains how diet reduces inflammation and how diet increases inflammation in detail, all about diet. So this book is about how diet flames us up in terms of general inflammation. And these other books, like this book here, about joints, muscles, etc., breast, and immune, this book shows what happens to our tissues once we live in a pro-inflammatory state. So this picture over here in the breast book is really great to show because you can see breast cancer driving diet versus breast cancer preventing diet. And this holds true no matter what condition we are looking at in terms of chronic diseases and infectious diseases. The more we eat these calories, the worse the infection state can be. So a single copy is easily purchased at Amazon. If you want to get volumes, you can go right over to deflame.com, and there is, click on the button, get right to the book, and you hit the drop-down arrow and get the volume discounts if you have an interest. And of course, you can follow, you're already on Listening, I guess unless you stop listening to this video, you should hit the like so I can get more subscribers. And if you want, you can follow me on Facebook at Deflame Nutrition and also on Twitter at DeflameDoc at Deflame Nutrition.